watching a movie in bed was
the move.
That's all we wanted.
Yeah, I think you just, at that point, you're just kind of, you have to trust your intuition on what feels like an opportunity and what feels like just pushing to do something, even though it's not really what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, are you going out because like, you'll feel guilty if you don't? You feel like you owe it to somebody to go somewhere, or?
I feel like if there's an experience that can't be had again, then that's worth going to do. Like, for instance, someone's in town that you haven't seen in a long time, or, you know, it's a concert that you really wanted to see the artist for a long time, or there's something that just is going to pass and then it won't come back around for a while. But like going upstairs at one extra level to a club is something that anytime you guys felt like doing, you could go do it.
Like in the city we live in too.
Yeah, in the city that you live in. I don't really feel like that's as much of a loss as like, you know, those nights where you're driving home from something and you're like, that was an incredible night. Typically they center around being with people you're really interested in hanging out with.
Yes.
And do these go left side, right side?
Whatever. I mean, the
way.
board is usually on the left side.
On the left side. Okay.
All good. Do what's comfortable.
If what's comfortable, I might go right side. I'm gonna be, you know, I'm gonna
Like
break
contrarian.
the mold. Yeah.
Dare
I like
to
it.
be AJ.
What's that?
I said dare to be AJ. Dare
Yes.
To be you.
Have to be.
Oh, you put honey in mine too?
Oh, sure.
You
I
honeyed
would
me
want
up.
that.
We are all
All right.
sweet like Italian honey right now.
Are the mics where they're supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, get up on it, nice and
Okay.
close. It's kinda
All
like-
right.
Especially with your buttery, sultry voice.
Ugh.
We're gonna want that. We're gonna want that grit.
Buttery, sultry compliments.
Yeah, this is really just a compliment show.
Cool.
Yeah, we give each other
I
pats on
can't
the back.
Wait. My ego needs it so bad.
Well, good thing you rolled up. That's the hard part. Sometimes it's just getting out the door, committing to the move.
It's
Yeah.
never too difficult for me because my door is attached to a car, so I live in a van, so it's kind of.
Yeah, you
Yeah, van
didn't
life.
Yeah.
leave your home. Well, you brought your home here and then you
It
left
is.
it across
It's
the
down
street.
the street. Yeah.
Remind me how long you've been living in your
Since
van house.
2021, September 2021, so almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years next month.
And what, I mean, because I think it's really cool, but like what made this dream? What gave you this idea? What was the pandemic, like pushing it over?
I think that's what brought me to the finish line on it, but I think that the idea of the lifestyle has always been appealing.
Nomad
Just
lifestyle.
not necessarily having the status quo, the structure of like knowing exactly where you're going to be all the time. I think what got to me was regiment and like starting to feel like everything was stale. Like I had taken some steps backwards from being freelance and gotten into having a 9-to-5 and was living a very domesticated kind of lifestyle. And I think as a part of all of that, there was a moment where during the pandemic, I think I just sort of had the epiphany of like, I would like to wake up and not know what's going to happen, because already we were living in this very unpredictable time and things were changing so rapidly and nobody knew exactly what was
So
coming.
it was during the pandemic that you moved into your van?
Well, that's when I built it.
Sick.
Yeah, I got it in November of 2020, and it was actually just dumb luck because my credit score wasn't good enough really to get one, to be honest, because like they were really expensive, and all of the delivery industry vehicles were getting bought up left and right.
To buy a van?
Yeah.
Like a pre sort of decked out, ready to live
well,
in?
no, I had to build it. So I
Right.
built it from the ground up, but like just to get the van, just to get
Oh.
the actual vehicle was
Yeah.
like a whole process. And I was going through it during the pandemic and trying to figure out like if it was even worth it. And that I had nightly anxieties about like, am I dumping all of my money into this thing that's just like not going to happen? Am I going to have the wherewithal to see it through?
So, yeah.
Like, because it was a lot of work ahead of me. Like, I was like, even once, just getting the van was so much work. And then once I got it, I was like, oh, fuck.
Now it really
That's when the work
begins.
starts, yeah.
I was so terrified. Like, it almost was like, in a way, I was rooting against myself. Like, don't get the van. Like, it'd be great if I just didn't get it, because then it would be like, it was out of my hands. I couldn't do anything
Right.
about it. But then once I got approved for it, and once I got it, and then this loan became mine, and I was like, oh, this $30,000 thing hanging over my head, it was like, oh shit. Like,
You got to do something with it, though. You kind of force yourself.
for real.
Like,
And I think there's an element to that of like, you get yourself in over your head, and then you just have to figure it out.
He's
Say that a lot.
He's a firm believer of that.
I think that's how you like sort of get ahead in life.
Yeah.
Or you don't have to be like getting ahead necessarily, but like you sort of get places by you get in over your head and you just like you'd surprise yourself how well you can survive when you
Bite off more than you can chew.
bite off more than you can chew. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it 24/7 because then you're going to run yourself into the ground. But every now and then putting that on you. And so you did see it through. Yeah, I mean, had it just been like a free van that somebody gave you, maybe you would have been like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
no real loss here.
I have a feeling the outcome might have been slightly different.
Yeah.
So you're a couple years in, still treating you well. You still like it. You still like.
There's
The
ups and
unknowns.
downs of it, just like there is anything. I think if I had to take something away from it, like a good lesson from it would have been like similar to what you were just saying, which is like one, putting yourself in the position that you have to do something and you have to figure it out. And there was so much of that with this, with just the van. I think it taught me a lot about myself and like my ability to weather some storms and like want to continue to push forward in an uncertain direction. But living in the van full time, now that it's done, like post everything being finished, has been great for the most part. It's just, there are certain things that you just have to deal with. Like, it's not the easiest thing in the world.
Well, where do you shower and where do you shit?
Right. Those are like two of the main things. But like the gym is having a gym membership is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And you have to have two if you're going to basically be living in the van and traveling, because it's nice to have like your local gym. LA Fitness is the one I belong to here. But then
Shout out.
they're not, maybe they'll sponsor the show.
Yeah, maybe get a free month.
Yeah, there you go. And then the Planet Fitness, which is the one that's sort of, countrywide. You can find them almost everywhere, and you have that one. And then there's like the outdoor shower thing. I have like a solar shower that can hang from a magnet on the back of the van, and that's like, if you're out in the boonies and nobody's around, kind of the best shower, because you're just like free and you're just like, I don't have any, concerns about someone popping up and putting me on a TikTok reel.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
Hell of a real.
it would be.
So, like, how often is it like that where you've driven this van out in the middle of nowhere and you're kind of camping and you're like, versus like just being parked kind of in Santa Monica or LA somewhere,
The first year was all of that, pretty much.
Nice.
I'd say like 7-8 months out of the first year was on the road and in different states exploring national parks. And I was I had made a sort of a priority that the first year was going to be sort of really seeing what else was out there. Part of the whole decision process of getting into a van and doing it was I'd fallen in love with the idea of being able to at any given moment pull the emergency cord and just be out and like go see something and like experience something. And like we were talking about earlier, it's like experience being sort of the gasoline to having something to say, having something to write about, having some sort of experience out there along the way that like informs your creative arts and the things that you're interested in. I came back from that road trip and I felt like a totally different person. It was like a night and day sort of situation. I was like, I'm really doing it. This is like, I'm actually making it.
Yeah.
The problem is, and the fairy tale sort of ends when you realize like you've got to be able to balance that with money and income and being able to produce and pay for your way and doing those things. And, we were coming out of a pandemic. It was really easy the first year to kind of just coast off savings and credit cards and just go see it and not worry about the outcome, not worry about, the repercussions of that. Because the mindset I was in at the time was like, well, this huge epidemic of disease just hit the country. Lots of people, felt the brunt of that.
It's out of your control at that point. Like,
there was
it's
just
one
a
of those,
level of like, there's no certainty about the future.
Right.
And so like in my mind, I was able to justify like just like letting go of the reins for a minute and saying, the best thing I can do right now is just go live it for what it is and take the days that come as they are. And that was the best I've ever felt. The reality is obviously that like, we're all still here. Society picked it back up. Yeah. And,
Arguably, yeah.
yeah. And you have to start.
You got to start paying those.
You got to start
back wages.
Yeah. You can't live that way forever.
Yeah.
And so, I had to come back to the city and, for the last year, it's been a mixed bag. I've been able to get out and go do little quick trips and come back. And, but living in the city is an interesting thing in the van. You see a lot that way too.
Like what? What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, you just, if you're sleeping in your van in the middle of the night, and I've literally like heard, for example, I was sleeping outside of an apartment complex one night, and I literally heard like a rustle. I look out the window and I see a guy like literally climbing up to the balcony of someone's apartment to steal their bike, and he's like trying to like take the bike off the rack. And I'm like in my bed, I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's like I felt weird because I was like, I definitely need to do something, but also this is where I live and he'll know that. And
Right.
it'll be like, fuck now.
And he can just come like throw a rock at this thing
Or,
and run away.
or just like, there's no escaping, there's no getting away from like confrontation. It's not like I can go back in my house.
Well, you could drive away.
Yeah, there is that element of it. And I had thought about that, but it was also like, it was all happening really fast.
Yeah, no,
and I
of
was
course.
like the middle of the night.
Because in some ways, there's like that benefit. Like if I had a real enemy who knew where I lived, it's like,
yeah.
oh shit. But
Good
you
point.
can actually move your house
Yeah.
somewhere else.
This is true.
And they won't know where you live. You
Yeah.
can even paint it or whatever.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Don't you have like kind of select options of like kind of neighborhoods you get used to parking because
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
where it's allowed?
I won't blow my spot up, but like I typically head towards the coast and like try to sleep anywhere in that area. And there's plenty of, I think actually, if there's one thing I get asked most about, it's probably that. It's like, where do you park this thing? And like, how are you allowed to do that? And it's like, if you're abiding by normal street signs and whatever, it's easy. Like you just have to be respectful. You can't be out there like thumping music in the middle of the night or like,
Grilling in the street in the middle
taking
of
a
the street.
piss outside the side of the van or
Yeah.
something. Like just don't be doing dumb shit and
Right.
you'll be fine. But
Yeah.
like but yeah, so this guy's like stealing this bike. Luckily, like right as I was working up the whole okay, my plan was gonna be, there was another guy who crossed the street who was like, hey, and I was like, oh thank God.
He's got it. I'm going back to bed.
I mean, I watched. I was like, I want to make sure this guy's okay, and I'll get out and get his back if some shit goes down. But like, I was also like so relieved. I was like, I don't want to be the one to have to deal with this.
Sure.
But it felt like it was gonna fall to me because nobody else. It was like middle of the night.
Uh-huh.
But luckily, this random dude who happened to be just out was like, hey, and like yelled at this guy, and he like got super spooked, shuffled down, and took off.
I mean,
Good.
the
But,
guy's
like,
kind
that
of
kind
a
of
bad criminal. Like,
Not good.
Two people noticed the crime. Maybe more. Maybe there was 6 people who were like, hope somebody says something. Is there?
A bad
Yeah,
criminal,
somebody had
or
already
just
called it in.
Yeah.
Everybody was watching.
Or just on a lot of drugs and didn't care.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like,
Desperation.
which is another part of it. Like,
Yeah.
you see a lot of that. I think that's the one thing that's really interesting is a lot of times I find myself wondering about how far there is of a distance between me and seeing people who are living on the street and, how they got to that point. Now, obviously I have an income and like I have other things, but there is a shorter distance between when you go into a van, or any kind of, out of the perimeter of normal social life,
Yeah.
you're living whatever
Uh-huh.
your experience is. I think there is a part where you're kind of trying to figure out if you're fucking up your life or not. Like, it happened a lot when my brother got married and then he had 2 kids, and then you start to see, like, he's my younger brother. So you start to see something like that and you're like, oh man, I wonder if I'm doing it right. But then you also have to balance that with like, is this what's right for me, or am I just wanting that because it's what everybody's always told me my whole life I should want?
Sure. Yeah, it's sort of following that intuition and that gut.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
like on paper, it's like AJ used to live in an apartment. Now he lives in a van. Like, there's
Yeah.
sort of like the steps, and like you could get in your head about like, yeah, like am I fucking up, or
All
is
the
it
time.
like, yeah, do you think like shit, like,
Yeah, I
am I
mean,
homeless and I just
because of
didn't
the
realize
stigma.
it? Like, has nobody told me? Maybe, like,
You do start to think that way.
Uh-huh.
You do start to go down, and especially if like some shit, like it doesn't take a whole lot. If you think about life, like when something bad happens to you, and then something sequentially also right after that happens, that's really bad, or things are bad around you in the world or whatever. We're already like sort of on this, glass hill where everybody's like sort of just like hanging on, making sure that they're doing their best that they can. And when you're living in an environment where it feels really unstable at times and can be, it adds to that element of like, when things go wrong, they really feel like they're going wrong, and you really feel like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like when you run out of money, or when you get close to the edge of like, feeling like this is as much as I can take right now, I'm not able to. It does it does take a lot of willpower not to let yourself slide. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you have to like hit that proverbial rock bottom and then pick yourself back up and start to try to make the climb again. But there is an element to living in something like a van or in these nomadic ways that like you feel uninsulated to like bad shit happening. Like like you're more exposed.
That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you're sort of naked to a lot.
Yeah. Because you don't have that comfortability of like, I'm just going to go home and shake this day off. You know, it feels more like you're going to go.
There's like work to do. It's like, I gotta figure out where I'm in a shit. You know, like I still gotta do that.
Everything honestly it is more work. That I will say, like every little, like washing your dishes 10 times more work. And that sucks already for a lot of people. Doing laundry, same thing. Gotta go to a laundromat, gotta do the whole thing. Or if you're lucky enough, like I've had friends who are like, hey, you can come do laundry here or whatever. It is a balancing act of like, some days it's like no problem. But on a day where you're like tired and you've had a long day and it's like, oh fuck, I really don't want to deal with
like,
the extra things.
Already grouchy, already looking for a reason to complain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're sort of living in like the elements, you know, it's like, almost like living in the past a little bit where like, like things are harder, like everything takes a little more work, but it's to that, you know, you put yourself in a little over your head and you kind of survive at every piece of it, like because you have to. Yeah. Like, I got it.
Also, you don't have to. You know, eventually you could change your mind and be like, that's no longer what I want. You know? And there's a lot of people out there like me who would be like, I could never build a van, but I'd buy a van. So let's talk. You know, like,
you're going to try and trade with AJ?
Yeah. Barter
no,
system.
not the House Lodge. We're keeping it. But, you know.
Yeah, like, do you think you'll be in the van for a long time? Is there like a fund that's like being saved up for like eventually you'll get out of the van? Is there a future plan or are you kind of taking it day by day?
It's a bit of both. I'd say there is a future plan. That the idea of being in the van forever is not appealing. Like that's not something that I've ever entertained, even for a moment. Even when I was doing it at the beginning, I was like, I think the most I'd ever considered having the van as part of my life would be like, oh, it'll be the extracurricular thing that I'll have in the driveway when I want to get out of here. But it would always, but that would be the only way it would like last. I think now that I've had some time to sort of look ahead and also kind of look behind and see what it felt like to be in it. Now I feel like it would be one of those things where like if and when I'm ready to jump out of that, it's actually the one good thing about this whole thing is it retains its value as a vehicle. And then if you did a good job building it, which I feel like I did, it grows in value because people, like you just said, who aren't really wanting to do all of the legwork, but just want the experience, would buy it outright and probably for more than what I paid originally for it.
I bet.
Right, you're getting paid like for your labor.
Oh yeah.
Basically as well at that point.
Basically, yeah, and for the amenities that are in it, it has a full working solar, and so everything in the van is powered off solar. It has like a max fan in it, so you can keep the ventilation rolling when you're cooking as a 2-burner stove top, running water with sink, and like so it's like a camper, you know. But basically, like you can live in it clearly. And for some people, it would be like, you know, like this is nice to have as, you know, a weekend little shuttle away with the kids, and so there's things in there that like obviously help add value to the van aside from it just being a van with relatively low mileage and a Sprinter van. I mean, I've even had the dealership call me and be like, hey, we'd be interested in buying this. And I'd be like, no.
Also, like the longer you're in it and the more discomfort you go through, the more you'll like appreciate like once you have a house or something.
Oh,
like,
yeah. I've already thought about
you're
that.
Just going to like,
I've thought about
we don't know how lucky we are, you know, like to just like, I'm going to go pee real quick. You know?
So many dishes in the sink. We have no excuse now.
We have no excuse, you know? Yeah. And like, it's like, you'll appreciate all those little things that you're living without for now.
Yeah.
You know?
I've already thought about like the first bath that you get to take when you're in your own house. And you're just like, oh yeah, I'm going to like throw a record on. And I mean, this is stuff that I did when I had an apartment and it was like lovely. I was like, this is the best. I do miss that kind of stuff. The balance comes in play when you're like, when you open up the side panel of the van and you're sitting, you know, above this beautiful landscape. And like, I've, you know, driven it up the coast of California and back up to Washington and Oregon. I've taken it out to Colorado and the Rocky Mountains. Like I've done all of the Southwest stuff through Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. Like I've seen a lot in that van. And there are mornings and days and sunsets and things that I wouldn't trade a million years living in the comfort of like a house or an apartment or anything in place of those.
Yeah.
So like there is, I make it sound like, I guess, depending on the day that you catch me.
No, I mean, you're just being honest about it. Like, there's
is.
pros and cons to everything, you know.
Absolutely.
And we did just kind of go through all the cons. you know? But yeah, the pros is abundant.
I think it's important to also like highlight what's so great about it, which makes it worth being in there and suffering through some of the stuff that sucks. Because it's certainly, I feel the scale is certainly tipped in favor of like the grandiose, amazing experiences I've gotten to have in that van.
I mean, even have you calculated like exactly how much money you're saving by doing this? Like compared to rent every month or whatever? Like, I mean, you're still paying for gas, and I'm sure there's expenses that you go through that other people don't. Yeah. But I gotta assume financially it's in your favor. It's
kind of in the middle. It depends. Like I think the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, is that there is this nest egg that is the van, that is the whole thing. That at any given moment, like you said, when I'm ready for it to be done, I do have this thing that's going to just bring in a lot of money at once that can help me go back into more of a structure.
Yeah, like start that next chapter.
Yeah, whenever that next chapter is revealing itself to begin.
Nice.
But I think that from a standpoint of where you weigh it out, like it's slightly in favor of like, being in the van, but not by as much as you might think.
Okay.
Like, because you do have a lot of unexpected, like obviously anytime there's an engine problem or you've got to fix your brakes and especially with a payload like the one that I have on the van, it's so heavy, it taxes the vehicle way more because you're just like, I have basically like 10,000 pounds of extra weight in the van. So shocks, suspension, oil changes,
just gas
mileage goes down. It all adds up, and that stuff is all part of the cost of living in the van. So from a month to month basis, you might be like in the black, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But then like one thing goes wrong, and it's not something that you can just overlook. You got to fix it, because if you don't, it's also your house. So it's like, damn, what are you gonna do if the transmission goes out, or fingers crossed none of that happens? But it's just like. That is a real concern all the time, because, fixing cars is not cheap. It's super expensive. Yeah.
Are you good with, you built the thing. That's pretty crafty. Are you good with cars? Do you fix up the car if there's a problem? Or
I can do the little things like, coolant changes, oil changes, like the basics. But like if it comes to the mechanics of like, I've got to the most I've done on that van at this point is like, I can change the wiper blades, and I can change a tire, and I can change I changed my headlights out and little things like that. Luckily, again, knock on wood, there haven't been any catastrophes that have happened. It's a pretty solid vehicle as far as that's concerned, and they're built for high mileage just because they're delivery vehicles. But yeah, it's just it's kind of at the whim of the universe at any given moment. Like, if something happens, it's like, okay, you don't have a choice. It's like, this is, again, one of those things that you have to kind of be thinking about in the back of your mind. Because, like, I guess the same thing could happen with a house, like, with fires and everything else. But it's like, it's far less likely. Like when I'm driving my car every day, all it takes is maybe one stupid guy or person to not be paying attention and, like, go through a right.
Crash into your house.
Yeah, crash into my house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, well, there it goes, But, like,
that's true. The odds of someone crashing into our house is much smaller than yours.
Yeah. But then, then I'm luckily, that's the other thing is insurance. You got to have insurance for the vehicle, but you also have to have, like, insurance to cover what's in it, because they're separate. Because, like, car insurance companies won't cover turning your car into a house.
Makes sense.
They're like all your possessions and all that stuff's like a separate thing you have to do on your own. Otherwise, it's like...
Is that like a home insurance, or is there some kind of special insurance?
It's like a special insurance. Is like, I forget, it's like possession, like a possessions insurance type thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like people like
you
insure
can
their
insure
gear
the camera
or things like that.
The way that you do that, it's basically that.
Okay.
And I just have it for like the things that are in my guitar, or like in my van, like my guitar.
There's
like
a lot of money in that guitar. Maybe it's like there's always money in the banana stand.
A camera? What camera? What are you shooting on these days? Because your pictures are stunning. Like,
thank you.
You go on your profile, it's like one amazing location after the next.
That's another reason the van thing has been so wonderful. Is a part of what I've been able to set up as a remote business is being able to sell prints. And
Nice.
and from what I've
Like
always
print on demand, or you print them yourself and then
print on demand, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah, like the way it is now, it's like I don't really want to go out and spend a lot of money on things if people aren't really interested in buying them right away. And not, especially where we are.
and where would you store it?
There's that element of it. It's also from an economic standpoint. It's like I don't want to put the pressure on me. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to put the pressure on anybody else. I don't want to feel. I guess like as an artist, and this is maybe I don't know. Part of me is like wrestles with this all the time, whether it's music or my photography or anything. It's trying to figure out how to sell something that you love, because like I would do it for free, and like I do it for free. Commodifying that is really difficult, because you're kind of trying to find a way that, you know, if people don't take to it right away, or people can't take to it because of the economics that they're, or, you know, whatever situation people are in financially, it is hard then to go and be like, hey, you want to buy my art? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't like that feeling.
Yeah, I'm not good at that
It feels
either.
I hate
really
that feeling too.
hard to sell people on stuff.
Which some people are so good at it. Some people are like, you need to hear my
And-
music. And then
Yeah.
you're like, but for me, it's like, I mean, you know, if you don't like it, obviously that's fine.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
not everyone's going to like it. Like, you don't owe me money because I made music, but like, check it out. I don't know. You know, like, it's always very kind of sheepish and like,
I think I'm just that way in general. Like with dating, with art, with the way that I consume things.
uh-huh.
I just want it to be a very natural process.
Right.
Like I don't want to feel like I'm being sold, and I hate feeling like I'm selling something.
Yeah, I get you.
I do too.
totally get
All
it.
my life, I was like, just no to sales. No,
It's
no,
hard.
I'm not
It's
doing
so
it. I'm not
hard.
taking a sales
job?
position.
Oh, yeah.
And like, part of me thought I would be good at it. And my dad was in well, he sells life insurance and does financial planning, and so it was always sales, like with banks forever. And he would be like, this is such a safe, secure job to kind of invest in. And I'm like, I can't do sales. No.
Yeah, I can't either.
Even like houses, you know, something that a lot of people genuinely want really badly, or at least think they do. It's just like something even people arguably need. I don't want to be the one that's.
I think it's harder when it's something that people need, because then you kind of feel, and this is just again a personal insight for me, you kind of feel bad that it's like, okay, this person needs this thing, and I'm trying to make money off them in a way that like it's more beneficial towards me. Maybe I don't really understand how that works, because again,
Yeah.
it's not my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like if there's a medium where like, hey, we're both going to win in this situation, I think that's the best you can hope for. But so often it's really advantageous to the person selling as opposed to the person buying in a lot of ways.
Well, like, I'd only be comfortable being a salesperson if I'm like unnecessary in the process anyway. Like
Yeah.
they were going to, like, you want this house, you were going to buy it. I don't need to sell it to you. But then at that point, like, so what am I doing here? You know, like, so I'm going to take a piece of this just for standing here, I guess, you know?
I mean, if you made it in the case that we're talking
course.
about, like that is the ideal scenario that you just explained, which basically is someone comes to me and goes, I love this and I want to buy it. And they were going to buy it from whomever made it. But I just happen to be the person that made it.
Yeah.
I think
That's a win.
is the win-win for both people, because they were going to buy art, and I've had that experience and it feels so good. You're like, I'm servicing a need that somebody really wants this particular piece of art. Not only that, but that picture didn't exist until I took it.
Right.
Which is part of the reason why I love taking pictures. It's like, it is all your perspective. It is all your vision and your imagination, even in the post part when you're like, and I don't do a whole lot of like messing with photos or altering them to look, you know, more. I just stick to the basics to really kind of bring it back to what my eye saw. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's the most important thing for me is like, when I go see something really like I got to go up in an air trike, which is basically like a hang glider with a motor.
Okay.
And this
Seen
was
those.
like one of the most, I had gotten to experience it. There's actually a story that's around this, but in 2018, I went to Utah to go work with some folks on a project and ended up getting myself into a little bit of trouble. I had basically like not realized that I had weed with me and I was traveling across state lines. I mean, I realized it, but I didn't think about it like that. I was thinking, I'm from California, you know, like whatever.
Right.
And I ended up in this small 2-lane town heading out to the desert to go meet up with some friends at a ranch, and got pulled over basically it all unraveled very quickly, and I ended up in jail over the weekend, like from
Wow.
Friday to a Sunday, because there were no judges to hear my case,
Damn.
quote unquote.
Do you have a mugshot on file?
I bet, but I've never seen it.
Oh, well, you have to.
I got
You
my
can- I bet you
fingerprint.
can
They
find
did the
it.
fingerprints. I bet I could. Actually,
I
that
think
would
it's
be
public
worth-
record.
If I can find it, I will.
I want to be arrested just so like I have a mugshot, you know, like
It's not as fun as you think. I
I
promise.
know, but
There are a lot
but
of like,
looking back,
unexpected costs to it. It just keeps
sure,
giving. It's
having to
like
go to a
this
court
gift that
date would be a
just-
bitch,
or
but
multiple. It does.
the
kinda
mugshot. Do you have a
follow you.
mugshot?
I mean, I was a minor, so I bet it doesn't exist anywhere.
Well, see, that was the other thing. I got this expunged from my record, so I wonder
Okay,
if
nice.
maybe it even exists.
Ooh,
still.
maybe they expunged
I mean,
it.
you know it
expunged it
exists
right out.
somewhere.
Expunged
They're
it
not
out.
throwing
Yeah.
away all their records, but they're probably lost somewhere, never to be found.
But okay, sorry. So I interrupted.
Well, just to tie it all together, basically, I ended up out there in the desert. This whole scenario unfolds. My friends on a Sunday night actually come and get me out, and then we go and actually had this really amazing experience. I went from like the lowest of the low to the highest of the high. Basically, they're all rock climbers, and we were climbing in one of the most. It's basically like it's called Indian Creek, and it's the epitome of like crack climbing, which is basically like you find like a big splinter crack and you just wedge yourself into it in a very painful way, and you make your way up it. And one of the guys who I was out there climbing with was like a preeminent sort of early adapter of this style of climbing. His name's Renan Ozturk. Shout out to Renan. He's a fucking awesome guy. But he basically, like, him and a handful of other people came and got me out of jail. They filmed this whole thing. They literally had the camera on me when I got out. I was like, I would love to see that footage.
Wow.
yeah,
actually.
that's pretty
This
good.
is back when I had my long hair, and I was like, I bet I look so good. So anyway, like we literally, I get out of jail, I go to the ranch, I meet up with all these people. I skipped a very important part of the story. There was a girl with me who I had just met, and this was also centered around my birthday. So it was like a whole thing. We were going to drive out to the desert. We were going to hang out with these people. This girl was really cool. She was new to my life. When I got pulled over and arrested, she was left by herself.
Oh.
And my friends came and got her basically and like took her back to the ranch. She had no idea what I had gotten arrested for. She was basically like, it could have been anything. Like could have been a killer, you know,
Right.
like any of that. We had only literally been on one date before this.
Wow.
Gosh, that's
Yeah.
So
quite
you
a
brought her
second date.
with you from LA
Yeah,
to
we
meet up
drove-
with this group of friends.
We drove out from LA together, and like the whole ride out there was awesome. Like, I mean, I drove through the night almost to get us out there because we only had a limited amount of time. And then this happens, this like basically happens Friday afternoon.
Uh-huh.
I was able to at least get a few text messages off to my friends, like, can you please come pick up this girl? I feel so bad. She's going through it.
God.
So anyway, I end up in jail. She ends up at the ranch. My friends are all trying to figure out what the F to do. Like, I don't know. Are we allowed to cuss on?
Yeah.
What the fuck to do? They're like trying to basically like, everybody's like rallying the troops. And like, I'm just sitting in jail, like kind of feeling sorry for myself. I was like, this is my birthday and I'm in jail. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, and the person I felt the sorriest for was like, I felt really bad for her. I was like, oh, she must be thinking the absolute worst thing.
She's like, he was so charming, like a serial killer would be.
am I lucky to be alive right now? Is this gonna be
she
one of
could be
those
going
nev-
through a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
she's like, ooh,
she didn't
dodged a
see them
bullet.
like find the pot or anything.
Well, it wasn't really the conversation that occurred when I got taken out of the car. So then
was
there
like
was
private.
So basically it was between me and him. He brought me in. He did some sneaky cop shit. Basically,
They always do.
they always do. So he puts me in the front seat of the cruiser, not the back seat where you go when you get arrested. He puts me in the front seat of the cruiser, and he basically says to
Been
me,
there.
like, hey, listen, man, level with me. Is there pot in the car? Because if you tell me now, we can sort it all out. I was like, no, man, there's nothing in there. I promise. He's like, okay.
He's like, you hippie.
He's like,
Your long
okay,
hair.
because we're gonna have to.
Long-haired hippie?
I mean, I had California plates. I had
course.
long hair.
Oh yeah, he was
I had-
coming for you.
Oh, he literally was. Oh, I didn't even mention the reason I got pulled over. 35-mile-an-hour zone.
Oh, the layers
He's
getting peeled
in the
back
left
from this
lane,
story.
and I'm in the right lane, and
Okay.
I literally like just go past him. So I'm going like 40, and he's just like, burp. I'm like, oh my god.
Which it's nerve wracking passing a cop, no
Oh,
matter
I
what.
hate
Like,
it. Always.
but then you feel so weird. Like, okay,
I was
I'll
like, if
just
I slow
hang
down, I think it's
back.
going to be more
Yeah.
like
Right.
noticeable.
What do I do? Just
like,
slam on my
right.
brakes now.
And like, I didn't also want to be driving right next to him
Yeah.
the entire time. I was like, I just want to get past him. And I was like, if I go like just a few miles per hour longer, like faster than him,
He'll understand
he'll
that
be
it's
like, oh, whatever. You know, he's probably cruising, looking to see if, you know,
Right.
whatever's happening in that small town. But like, yeah, so like, he pulls me over. We go through this whole thing. Like, he tells me what's going to happen next. He's like, we're going to bring the dog out. I was like, the dog? I was like, you have a dog? Like, this is
it is so manipulative.
It's crazy. And basically, he wore me down to the point where, like, I'm in the front of the seat of this car. I'm like, yeah, man, okay, there's like a little bit of pot. It's like in this, and I told him, and basically from that moment on, it was like, I got you. And he put me in the back seat after that. I was like, you fucker. Like, just,
Yep.
it was all, you know, he had the mic on his little, whatever, they wear that lapel that has like a mic on them. So they're like recording.
So they don't want to, you know.
Yeah,
and all of
exactly.
a sudden it doesn't work. He gets lost or stepped
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Expunged.
they were fishing for little California hippies
They,
that day.
they really were. There's
they
nothing
caught
going
you.
on in this town. Like, there is nothing.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the
happening.
thing. You can
That's
pass a
the-
cop in LA because, like,
Yeah, they
he's
got like a million
yeah.
other more important things to deal with than you. Yeah.
Seriously.
I would be so surprised getting a speeding ticket in LA. I'd be like, what
I
did I
don't
do?
either.
They'd be like, you were driving like 100 miles an hour. I was like,
Like everybody
so?
does.
Yeah.
I
Like,
was
what
with
do you
the
mean?
was with the flow of traffic.
Yeah,
Saw the
we
other-
all were.
I saw the other day though that like LAPD has its lowest application rate like of all times. Like the police
Yeah, I
department
bet.
is like smaller than it should be. But there's like 9,000 officers in the whole city. There's like 10 million people.
Yeah, and,
But,
and we're also at the same time saying, hey, can you guys pick up the homeless situation?
Yeah,
over there?
yeah.
It's like, we kind of need to figure out that whole balance.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough, man.
I
It's
mean-
tough to be a cop. Like I think police officers aren't all bad, and like there is a purpose, and yeah, it's a tough job.
There is a
I do
purpose, but there's also
have
like
compassion for a cop.
yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, obviously.
But like if I got pulled over, I
don't-
wouldn't talk to a cop. I would not
It's a
like
dangerous
agree to a
job.
search and seizure. You know, like I'm not gonna just like give up.
But the thing is, it's not that easy because they often berate you and they like don't take no for an answer and they you know
well, you gotta
wait
keep
for you
giving
to
them no.
crack.
You gotta not crack.
I know it's hard though.
It's tough.
That's the thing
Utah
is,
cops are different, man. They literally
Small
have,
town
they have
cops.
nothing else to do.
Yeah.
that's kind of
like-
the way it was when we grew up in the
Yeah.
town, and they just go
You-
out of their way, and that's their job. I get it, but I also
you're right,
think
though. It
that
was-
I think cops should be there when you call on them for assistance, not out there policing.
Trying to like
Because
get
what they're
teenagers.
policing is not in people's best interest. It's in money's best interest, and it's not a good habit. I don't
agree.
think
I
that
agree
they
with
should be responsible for like helping the homeless because I don't think they're empathetic enough as a workforce.
We've seen that play out time and time again. But
Yeah.
I mean, not to. I think that's an important subject. I just don't know if it's like how we're.
You don't know.
they're
Please
following
go
this-
on. Go on.
But like, I mean, because that will take us on a totally different.
No, that's a
trajectory.
dark place. We don't need to
But
go there.
I would go there. I think off mic, maybe more or less, just because
There you go.
there's
We'll tear
a lot
into
of
it.
opinions.
We'll write a song about it.
We
after
will,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, you've had a really up close and personal view, I'm sure.
So I mean, and not only in more ways than one, my father's a retired cop. He was one for 25 years. So it's kind of like I had like a lot of experiences that were positive when I was young with cops, and I kind of grew up thinking they were heroes.
Uh-huh.
And so obviously the mirror gets broken, that glass mirror gets broken of like when you see the really shit people doing really shit things. It's like how you're rectifying, justifying what you're seeing versus what you grew up with, because the people that I grew up with and the people that I saw only ever seemed to be doing it the right way.
Doing good.
But he also is a cop in a really small town, and so it's a lot different, I think, in their town. So when all that happened, it was like a whole. It was a shift, like for me. Like I was trying to rectify like my experience, which was in a small town with my dad being sort of like everybody knew who he was. He was liked by the community, and people genuinely respected him for the job that he was doing. In a metropolitan city like LA, and growing up here and being here for as long as I have, like I imagine like, one, the job's not easy, but two, that doesn't excuse you doing a bad job, because you doing a bad job is actually so much more. It's just way more impactful because it is like,
Because people trust you to do a good job. Like you're supposed to be one of the.
but also like
On the good side.
how it can affect someone's life. We're talking about me getting pulled over in a small town in Utah and ending up in jail for a weekend. It's a slap on the wrist. It doesn't in fact
Sure.
change.
But it could have been something that you're still just like trying to pay off or living with or still
Sure.
in jail for or whatever.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I think what happens is, like you were saying, it's like, there's a balance that has to be struck between, policing for the sake of policing and then being there when there's actual
When people
need.
people need the.
So I think to
emergency
leave that
support.
on that note is like to say that like, you know, what needs to be found is that balance. Like,
I
okay,
agree. I don't mean to throw all cops under the bus, but
No, but like, you know, a surgeon, not all, I don't know, like if you're a bad surgeon, like that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
right.
So you have to go through so much school and so much training to become a surgeon at all, because it's like, it's a heavy responsibility to have. And cops like equally have a heavy responsibility, but like they don't go through 4 years of like intense, or 6 or 8 years of intense school to get there. Like, and so I don't know.
Yeah, and I just don't
But that's
think.
because the demand is so high.
And I
that's
think
the problem. It's like-
times. Well, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say that the demand is so high. You look at teachers too, the same thing. It's like when there isn't enough to fill a need.
You need so many cops. You can't have it all be.
You're willing
like
to like overlook so much.
Yeah, that's
and I
true.
think that's how you end up with bad people in positions of power, where they can really be destructive.
Yeah.
It's because we're at that place and are at a juncture now where we're willing to overlook so much. I mean, look at how we ended up with a reality star as a president. You know, like it's just that a number of things have to happen now before we're even willing to consider somebody as a risk. It's like crazy. It's like, no, like that person shouldn't be in that position.
Right. They shouldn't be in the running.
Yeah. Or anything, because like clearly they're not there in the right ways to make the right decisions. And so like, but again, when there's a high enough demand for something, the things that get overlooked for that are just like wild. And and you can see it.
So actually,
everywhere.
we want more people to apply to be LA city,
Yeah,
city
there was,
police officers.
if it was a competitive field for it, then yeah, they would be able to
That's the
basically say,
best.
no, we don't need.
Right, you
these
can turn away people, but they probably aren't in a position. I mean, especially now, they're understaffed.
They're
so
under-
like,
I know that's
they're like,
actually riskier than I realized.
there's like a help wanted sign outside the police station. You know,
Yeah.
like
And I mean, things are so different though too. Like from when your dad was working to now. Like I just it's sort of like arming police as military and like treating them as an extension of military, which is kind of where I get.
but what if they
freaked
were
out.
trained as well as the military? You know, like
It's just like, who are they gonna be fighting? I guess domestic. Like I just don't want. It just scares me that it's gonna be like that strength unleashed against like our own population of just regular citizens.
Well, and we saw that there was like a lot of examples of that happening during the protests of like what a military enforced.
Right.
I mean, I remember I took a lot of photos during this time. I was out.
I was looking at your page. I was looking.
Yeah, I was out
deep
every
and
day
saw some of those
for
the
about
other
a
day.
month and a half in support and solidarity with people that I had known that had been affected, and just as in general feeling like this was the right thing, based on clearly the George Floyd thing and all the other incidences that followed it. I think it's one of those things where like two things can be true at the same time. Like we can all appreciate the job that a policeman has to do or a policewoman has to do on a day in and day out basis. It's stressful, it's hard, it's not easy. You're expected to make good decisions very quickly, and in the heat of a moment things can happen and go
you
wrong.
put your life at
and your
risk.
life is at risk every single day. And there's an element to that like no one but people who are cops and associated with cops or married to them, have them as fathers, whatever, will ever understand.
yeah.
Because you're not there to see it every day. You don't know what they're dealing with on a day in and day
How
out.
stressful that
The
must be
stress,
alone,
how you compartmentalize what you see. Think about the calls that you go on. The child abuse calls and things of that nature. Those things imprint on you in ways that you won't even know for decades. I mean, and one of the things I always marveled at my dad was how he was able to keep kind of things in perspective. Like he would come home and I was like, this was home life and this is work life, and he can compartmentalize.
Take off the cop hat, put on the dad hat.
But I can't imagine that that's the same for everybody, obviously, and some people handle that much better than others. And again, like you said, it's different now. It's a way different
right.
time.
Yeah, the day your dad was coming home from is different than maybe the day someone's coming home from
In a big city.
today. Yeah, in a
And-
big city,
yeah.
of course.
Yeah, the crime and the types of things you're seeing are.
Yeah.
But I think you nailed it there, and we can move on from this, but like two things can be true at the same time,
Yeah,
which is so
and-
hard for people to
yeah.
wrap their head around because we're told, or it's just sort of
You got to pick.
happens that way. Yeah, like
Yeah, everybody wants you on one side of the fence or the
this
other.
or the other. Yeah, and it's like,
yeah, no,
look,
it's so polarizing.
yeah,
And I mean that we saw that play out in elections. We saw that play out on, you know, the Black Lives Matter thing. We saw it play out time and time again. Was like, how do we? It almost felt like people were being weaponized against each other,
100%.
because you had polarizing figures in the media and polarizing figures in politics all over making stances, and they have influence, and influence is, you know, that's what it's there for. It's used to sway the masses, and like people will fall in one camp or the other, and then go to war with each other over this stuff.
I know, I'm still recovering. I'm still recovering from
I think
that
we all-
administration.
I think we
and
all
I'm,
are.
Yeah, it's like, it's intense. I tried to cut my...
And it looms large because
I know.
there's a
I
possibility
know.
that even after everything that we've already experienced and seen and play out, that could happen again. And I think the mind box at just the level of insanity it would take, but it's not beyond. I think that's the scary part.
It is terrifying.
It isn't beyond the realm of possibility that
no,
that
not
could
at
happen.
all. Or somebody worse,
Worse.
you know, like now you have like, he sort of made a playbook that other people can follow now.
And
like
you see other
there's going to
people.
be the ripple effect. We'll deal with it for a while.
Yeah.
It's going to be,
And it's not just
decades.
in this country. You look at other countries like in the Philippines or in like South America and places
Yeah,
in that.
like Brazil. They were
Yeah,
just,
there was the whole thing in Brazil where like they were literally following that same playbook. They
Mm-hmm.
were going down the, you know, how are we going to weaponize social media and how can we like change the narrative around the things that we don't want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's this whole philosophy around like, let's just figure out what the talking points are. Like what are the hot buttons that we can push that are really going to drive people into our camp. And, you know, in this country, it's religion, sexuality, like those things that like, you know, people who are very conservative want to keep a certain way, and people who've, no offense to anyone, but like have experienced more life don't seem to have such an issue with. It's like there's a reason why people in the major metropolitan cities tend to err on the side of being more in the liberal camp when it comes to like live and let people do what they want to do. It's because they've seen the effects of letting people have equal rights.
Right.
And it isn't as bad as what you think it is, like in a conservative small town where you think, oh, the children. You know?
Yeah. Well, and also like in a big city, you're
Absolutely.
seeing so much. It's like, what are you going to do? Let them fucking, you know,
Right.
they're not hurting anybody.
And-
like,
and you're-
let's move on. Keep
It
walking.
is. It's small town America versus big city life, and like there's a clash of ideals. There's a clash of like beliefs. It's like we're always going to end up finding ourselves on the cliff of one or the other. I just think that at a certain point it has to come to a head where like, listen, we're all living together whether we want to or not. Figure it out and let people just do what they need to do to survive a very difficult environment
seriously.
as it is.
There's so much going on.
Yeah,
We don't need to
yeah.
be fighting each other, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my optimism is that like as the pendulum sways and things are more and more polarized, and you're white or black on every single issue, like that middle, like everyone starts to kind of like congregate in the middle and be like, we're so sick of that, and like,
Yeah.
let's just sensibly.
hear each other out.
From your lips, I hope.
Yeah, I would love that. I think, you know,
Yeah.
think there's a wave of everything. Everything kind of breathes, and like right now, it's like that's the breath.
Yeah.
But like I hope there's a time when it comes back, and then it'll be polarized again and come back again.
Yeah.
I hope.
I heard the other day that it's like when your anxiety goes up, make your action go up. Basically, just do something about it. Your activism get going. Like,
I
so
think
I'm going to try to find some outlets
Yeah.
to put some of this stressed out energy I have over the state of things into action, so that I can feel a little bit better. And I did stop reading the news this month. It's still, I'm not like unfollowing every single channel that gives me news on Instagram, but I'm not seeking it out as much, which is a step in the right direction for me personally. So,
I mean, I think what's true in that situation, and what I've come to find is true in my life, is that if you're absorbing it and it's impacting you in a negative way, you're not helping yourself, and
Yeah.
therefore you're making it worse. Because
Right.
how can you help anyone if you're not able to even help yourself?
Right.
Yeah.
So
and
you
the
do have to
situation
cut myself off.
that's affecting you, you're not helping it either.
Yeah. Right.
So you're just adding to the negativity of that situation.
Yeah. It's basically,
for that reason, I'm out.
For that reason, I'm out.
yeah. But so to sort of bring us back into
Let's get you on this hang glider.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
still got to
Oh my
get you.
Yeah, we were so far away from that. So basically what ties that thread together is that when I did get out, of jail there and made it back to the camp. We went climbing, and the next day we woke up to film. They were all there on a filming project, and basically this guy Chris, who's the pilot of this air trike, was there, and we met for the first time. And I was just running around with a camera, and I was shooting a bunch and having, in light of just getting out of prison, one of the best days of my life. I was like, this is amazing. And so we kind of connected there. And like, I told him, man, if there's ever an opportunity for me to get on that air trike, that would be just the best. And it, took a couple of years, but basically he hit me up earlier this year and was like, hey man, I'm going to be up in Pismo flying with a mutual friend of ours. If you want to come up, I can get you on, we can go for a flight and we'll go do this thing. And I was like, I can't, is what we were talking about earlier. It's like, there's certain opportunities in your life that are just like, this is a thing that you will regret forever if you don't go do it.
Yeah.
So I figured it out, made the arrangements, got up there. We wake up super early. I sleep in the van all the time, but I slept in a parking lot that night just to kind of like get close. And then we meet up, we go to the airport in the morning. And this thing is insane. If you've ever been a go-kart,
yeah.
You know how there's just the one seatbelt?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now imagine that like 3,000 feet up in the air. It's just that.
My God.
It's no different than like, it's like if you were going in a bumper car.
Yeah. Like in the shopping
I don't
cart,
love
like
that.
there's the little buckle for the kid.
Oh my God.
Oh,
It's
no.
literally that.
Oh my God.
It feels wildly unsafe, but I trusted.
I think that's because it is probably.
It actually isn't. I trusted Chris because he's been doing it for such a long time, and he's solid. Now look, can anything happen? Of course. But I was like, in my mind, I was like, there's a certain level. It happened when I went skydiving. It happened whenever I go climbing. In my life, when those opportunities come up that this is a once in a lifetime thing, and even if it is somewhat of a life threatening once in a lifetime thing, I justify it by saying like, listen, when the dust is settled and I'm kind of washing my hands and this is the last breath I'm going to take in this life, I don't want to look back and think that there were other moments that I could have experienced that would have, been memorable. So this was that. And I just basically like, whenever I've been in that situation, I just kind of go into my like Zen zone and go like, whatever's going to happen is whatever's going to happen. And I just accept it. And then I'm able to enjoy it. That being said, I still was in the beginning when we take off, like, it's just like that moment of like, here we go. And off we are. And like, it was a beautiful sunrise morning. There were clouds socking in from like the morning fog from the ocean. And we're basically right over the Pismo dunes. And we're flying over the dunes. It's 50-50 split desert, dunes, and ocean. And so I have a lot of photos on my Instagram that are of this. And then we literally flew from Pismo all the way up to Morro Bay, Morro Rock, if you've ever been up that way.
This is Northern
know of
California?
it.
I don't even know Pismo.
Central.
Okay.
Yeah, like
San
just
Luis
short of
Obispo.
Big Sur. Yeah,
Cool.
on the way up to Big Sur.
Gotcha.
So like Morro Rock's like this huge rock. It's like a big thing where like it's a tourist, stop where people come in and like check it out, go kayaking around it and come back. It's a surf spot too. So we basically flew all the way up there and around this thing, and he showed me the coast, and we come back down, and during this time we're also on comms similar to what we're doing now, but like we're talking while we're flying so we can hear each other because it's so loud up there with especially there's like a propeller right behind me. So like I have my camera, I'm like strapped in, and it's really funny because like you get so into the camera that you forget, like I'm leaning out over a fucking air trike, like I'm just like leaning out over this thing taking photographs, and there's just a seatbelt holding me in there, and there are moments where like I'm trying to avoid the wheel so it's not in my shot, or like I'm just thinking like I'm thinking more of like from a camera's perspective, like how do I like get the best shot, and then I realize I'm like that's not smart.
Yeah,
I need to not be doing that.
Oh my God.
But it was, I'll show you guys pictures and videos
please.
of this stuff, but it was epic. And so the shots that I got from this were just amazing. They were like literally some of the best stuff I've ever shot because the perspective is so unique. And I think that's what I knew then back in 2018 was that this is something that if you get a chance to do it, you don't say no to, because there isn't anything else like it. Like you don't really get to fly like that in anything else. Like you skydive, it's fast. You're not taking pictures in skydiving. You can hang glide, but again, that's so it preoccupies your, you can parachute, the same thing. It's like you're preoccupied with other things. If you're just along for the ride in this thing, it's insane. It just feels like you're flying.
That's really incredible.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Better you than me, but that is incredible. Man.
Well, it's funny, like,
I'll
because
just buy the print. I'm good with that.
yeah, please.
Someone's gotta buy that print.
If someone, that's what it's there for.
You build it, I'll buy the print.
That's,
okay?
hey, I need those people in my life too.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to be in the air trike. But I mean, I told a few friends, actually it's funny, like I told one of my really good friends, because I didn't tell my mom because she would just freak out and worry.
Sure.
But I told a few friends, like, this is what's happening. In the event that something goes wrong, please tell my parents and all this. Like, I gave them the information. So, like, wasn't being totally irresponsible. But, like, with those things I've learned over time, like, it's better to tell them after it's done.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you tell them before, they just stress and it becomes like a whole thing. And, like,
Sure.
it's just like, I don't really want to deal with the stress of it.
Yeah. That's like unkind to do, to call your parents and
Yeah,
be
it's like, hey, by the way.
I'm jumping on an airplane tomorrow.
Yeah. You should know this.
So good night. They're like,
Hope you get some sleep.
what? Yeah.
So we dream,
Yeah.
mama, dearest.
Yeah, it is but like, again, that whole, I imagined that my dog is hey no
Lick
she's
it off.
just licking. She's cleaning.
Let her lick. We haven't dusted. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's
she'll
dust.
dust for
All
us.
she's licking is dust.
I think there's resin over there and she's just trying to get her high
There
going.
you go. She's getting it going.
But so like that all tying back into like the adventure lifestyle that I'd planned out being in this van was going to be like all the time that, and it it's been 50% this year. I'd say, like, I've been able to kind of have those experiences, go do those things and really enjoy it. I think one of the things is when you are doing it every day, and I do remember like the first 9 months being out on the road every day, there is a level of hurrying that you don't realize that you're doing. You're kind of in such a place where you're like, oh, I can't wait to do the next thing, that you're not really settling in the place that you're at. You're just kind of like, I'm going to go see this, and then I'm going to go see that. And you're just,
Planning the
pinballing
next
all over the
steps already,
place.
yeah.
And instead of just allowing yourself to be there. And I think that's something that I learned, like from travel and everything, was like, looking back, I wish I had been more present. Like, I wish I'd kind of sucked those moments in a bit better.
But it's hard too. It's like, that's kind of goes with traveling, and like, life in the circus is like,
yeah, it's moving.
It's
really
moving.
quickly.
It's wild, and it's like, and then there's life on the farm, which is like quiet and calm, and you sort of wish that was more energetic, and you wish you took like a time to appreciate life in the circus versus life on the farm. But it's sort of just the nature of what they are, I think.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah,
That's how I compartmentalize my life these days.
Well,
There's life in the circus and
was
life on
gonna
the
say,
farm.
yeah.
Right now, this is life on the farm. And I wake up, I go to the gym, I make coffee, I go to work. It's pretty like nice and comfortable. At night, we lay in bed, we watch TV or a movie. It's wonderful.
Yes.
Life on the farm. And then sometimes my life is, life in the circus. And I'm in the UK and I'm running around, and it's like, this is the circus, and I can't wait to get back on the farm. And after a long time in the farm, I'm ready for a little bit of a circus,
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it.
It is an interesting thing how one can make you appreciate the other more. And I think that's something that, like, I've, without having the structural place to go and lay your head at night, so to speak, like, this is like, where you go and hang your hat. I think an element of that is lost in a way. Like, I like, similar to what you said, you get a sense of like appreciating.
Eating. I hope it's not drugs. Don't be drugs, and anything else is good.
I don't think it would be drugs.
I mean,
it'd be weed, if anything, if any drug.
That should be all right.
I know, but
All the other drugs are locked up.
what's down? There is some stuff down low, isn't there?
I mean, there's bags of weed on the windowsill there.
No, I don't think that was anything. She's okay.
She's
Okay,
all right.
Good.
If she starts,
Thanks for the weed, by the way, that your dog ate. AJ bought the weed.
I had to replace it. I had a feeling she was gonna
No, that's funny.
ambush your
I
supply.
think that's the real problem about the system that we've designed is like the house and stuff. It doesn't leave enough room, but it's like we need to figure out a lifestyle that allows for a little bit of both.
I mean, a little bit of both.
of the unknown adventure
Yeah.
and the house
You don't want to
The
just
roots
live in the circus
and
always.
the wind. You need
Yes.
it both.
But you don't want to just spend your whole life never leaving the farm
Yeah.
either,
Yeah.
So you find those adventures, and then like the only thing better than traveling is coming home after a
Getting back
trip
home.
and just. Do you get that in your van? Like if you fly somewhere and you're gone for like a week or two, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Then you get home. Is it like I'm back in my place? Like is it that sort of comforting? Because no matter even if it's
I
parked
don't
somewhere
think
different.
you do. Like,
you
I mean,
don't
if I'm
get
being
it.
totally honest, I
Yeah.
think like when you come back to it, it's almost like, oh no, it's like I've got a lot to do. Like, so like the last time that happened was when I went to Sayulita to shoot John's music video.
Mhm. That's where we met.
Yeah, which is where we met. And
What was that, 2 years ago already?
yeah, it's close to it.
Yeah, wow. It's pretty crazy.
Well, I went back a couple times after that too to like do other stuff, but yeah, so just like going and doing that, being there for a couple weeks while we filmed, and like coming home, it wasn't like, you know, coming home to I'm gonna like take the time on the farm, like you said. It felt more like I'm coming back and I've got like a shitload of things to do, and like being in the van, like if you're out of the van for a couple weeks, you have to like down it, basically. I have to like turn off all the things that are in it, and like
Right.
so setting it all back up, and then getting back into the swing of, okay, here's how it's going to work. And like, you know, the thing with the van is like, it's become such a part of my life because I've been doing it. But I think to a point where I'm kind of like, I don't know if this is the thing that I want to always be determining so much. And it does determine a lot. Like, I have to think about things. Also with the dog,
I love your dog, by
she's
the way.
great, but
pretty rad.
But she's also, that's another part of it. It's another element of like when you have a dog in a van versus a dog in a house, you can't just leave the dog in the van the way that you would in a house.
Right.
So like I've always got to be planning that out. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
always with her, huh?
Yeah, or finding her a daycare, or like if I've got to go do something, it's like, you know, they're like going internationally and traveling and doing any of that stuff. Like now when I go for myself and we go on road trips, she freaking loves it. She goes with me.
Sure.
I've got pictures of her and all these awesome places that she's gotten to see. That dog's lived a lot of life in the 2 years she's been alive. But that comes with a certain level of like, also when things are circus time, like I've now got that extra ball in the juggling act to figure
Right.
out where,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, how am I going to balance all that out, you know? And she's an expense in herself. So it's just
Yeah.
like, you know, you got to pay for dog food, which is not cheap now. And like, there's a whole lot of other things that
Yeah.
go along with that.
Well, yeah, I didn't mean to like make you feel like, you know, you never get to make it to the farm.
No, I
Living
don't
in
think
the van.
that's not. It's my life. I have a pretty good understanding of what it
Yeah,
is.
that's
Like,
true.
yeah, before we even came here.
Yeah,
But
of
like,
course.
I don't think that's how it made me feel. I think it's just more like I don't have it. Like that's not part of
Yeah.
that feeling that you were
Sure.
alluding to.
And I mean, this is just a concept I've sort of recently just kind of started associating. But yeah.
Yeah. No, there's no offense taken in
Cool,
any way
cool.
whatsoever.
Well, yeah, as you're sitting here, you're like, yeah, I mean,
No, I think it makes perfect sense to me. I get why it's appealing. It appeals to me too. I'm like, I used to fantasize about like getting a little something, Airstream, just drive to one city, shop, get all the coolest things, drive to the next city, sell those cool things, buy some new things, and just kind of shop my way around.
Yeah.
But I also love the natural, like the parks and doing all that and camping more. It'd be nice, but I think I'm more of like the park it in the driveway, use it as much as you can throughout the year,
Yeah.
kind of that middle ground.
I think
That's what
I'm actually
think is
learning
the
that
sweet
that's
spot.
where I would like to get to
Yeah.
eventually as well, which is like it's all good when you're
It's
first,
elective,
Yeah, when
you
you're first
know,
starting out,
when you
it's,
want it.
It's exciting. Like anything, like any new thing that you start doing, the first couple like year or two or anything, dating, whoever, whatever it is, it's like it's always more exciting right at the beginning because you've never experienced a lot of those things, and then as you go through it, you start to realize. But I think where like anything else, you fall in love with something is when you've gone through all that exciting part of it and it does take a dip, and then you realize how to live with that as part of your life. And like and there is an element to being in the van that is always romantic to me. Like there is a part of it that always appeals to me, and like I think that there always will be, to be honest. There's a reason why I did it in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a reason why like I loved reading Jack Kerouac books when I was growing up, or like that I loved, the movie Into the Wild, and I like romanticized this feeling of like, what was important to me was not paychecks and accumulation of stuff, materialization, like none of that shit really mattered to me for my whole life. Like I never really thought about things in the way that they pertain to monetary value. I thought of things in the way that they pertain to experience. And like experience outweighed everything. Like if I could barely afford to go, but I could, you know, pinch a penny here to go to a concert, I would do it. I would figure out a way. I would go negative in my bank account to, you know, put gas in my van to go do something that I really wanted to do, or whatever. Like, and I'm not trying to romanticize being broke. I'm just saying that like sometimes you make the decisions based on what feels like something you can't live without. And there's been many times where like, yeah, this is gonna suck for me later. I'm sure I'm gonna come to regret it in some way or some fashion. But like, will I really regret it?
Yeah.
Right.
In comparison to whatever experience it allowed me to have.
And then you're on your deathbed.
Right.
That's the moment that really matters anyway. When you're like, I'm about to die, and it's like you'll just be like, yeah, I feel good about it. I feel good about what I did here.
Forget that. It's the moments you wake up staring at the Pacific Ocean. You're just like,
sure,
oh,
that
wow.
too. Yeah.
That's what comes back to you in that moment. You know, like that's what you're like. I
just mean you don't have to wait till the end of your life to enjoy it. Like you get so many kicks
but
along
like
the
you
way.
don't miss $400 when you're sitting on your deathbed. You
Right.
you're like, fuck,
Sure.
I wish I would have gone there. I wish I would have flown that thing. You're not like, I should have saved those $30 or whatever. You know, like you don't
I
think
wish
about
I wouldn't
that.
have parked on that block and I got my van impounded. And
Yeah, like it's part of the story, you know. Like at least you went for it, you lived, you did it. Like I agree with you there. And it sounds like there's like
It's rebellious,
it's freedom,
really.
what
It
you
is.
really want. Like you know, like consumerism and the modern world can really chain you to a lot of things. And like
It's designed to do that.
It's designed to do that,
Yeah.
and you sort of you actively seem to reject that in a cool way.
Or at least question it
Well, I think
more
it's,
than your
it's-
average Joe.
I don't know if it's intentional as you guys make it sound. Like I
What
think
to do today?
Yes.
Reject consumerism.
buck the societal norms. It's the top of my list. But I think that it is an innate thing with me and with people who find themselves in this lifestyle or similar lifestyles is there is a calling to something more than what is provided for us as an example for aspiration. Like people will tell you your whole entire life, you want to get married, you want to have the house, you want to have the kids, you want to do the thing, and this is how you do it. This is the example
college,
that they lay
get a
out.
job. Yeah.
And look, is there anything wrong with people who find themselves in that way of living? No, there's nothing wrong with it. If that's what makes you happy or if that's how you were fulfilled, then do it. Like I'm not sitting here advocating that everybody throw themselves into this, you know, sort of crazy tilt-a-whirl. I'm just saying that like for me, it didn't feel like a choice. It was just sort of like, this is where my intuition is taking me. This is where my life kind of feels like it needs to go. And it'll come to an end, like this particular part of it, but there will be another thing. And there always has been, and there always will be another thing that is going to draw my attention, like make me feel. And I think the thing that I notice is that the similarity or the common thread between all those things is it exists in an outliers world. Like it's more like it's not going to be something that's normal a lot of the time. Yeah, it's in the fringe. I would like to find like a balance that's a bit more like normal at some point. Like I think that there's a middle ground between the two that allow someone who's, you know, passionate about that part of their life and wants that to happen, but also is interested in having a family and, you know, having a partnership and all those other things. Because that's the other thing that we probably didn't touch on, but like for anybody who's aspiring to van life, it's hell on your dating life.
Is it?
Oh yeah.
I had a buddy who lived in his van. He's like, I never got laid more in my life. I was like, yo, I live in a fucking van.
That
And they're
makes
like,
me not wanna sleep
you
in that
sound
van.
interesting.
I
you
think
know?
it just depends on who's in it.
Yeah, maybe. But look at you, dude.
Yeah,
I'd have sex with you in a van.
Oh, well.
Any day.
Thank you. I
But
appreciate that.
so what was your experience with that? It was like inviting, like that was
You
sort of like
can't.
a
That's
bomb
the
you
part,
were
right? Like
inviting.
it's like it almost feels like you're laying this. I don't know. It's really difficult because like you have to figure out how to compartmentalize what feels right to you versus what feels right to someone who's meeting you on a dating app or some like they don't know anything about you. So like out of the gate, you kind of got to be honest, because it's like, hey, I don't want to mislead somebody down this road that they may not want to follow you on, you know, like.
Well, and also it shouldn't be a secret.
No.
In a way, and
it shouldn't be a secret, but it also
but you also don't want to scare people away.
Well, there's that part of it, but it's also like there's an element to it of like you need to let people know, but you also needs to not just be a deciding factor all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it shouldn't identify.
Yeah, because again, I don't want the van. What I was saying earlier is to become such a central preoccupation of my life that it's determining everything that's happening to me.
Right, because then you're chained up again.
It changes nothing if that's how I'm living. Basically, what I do with this situation is, like, I am still on dating apps. I'm still trying to meet somebody. I'm not, like, totally in the wind about it. But, like, it comes up pretty quickly. Like, usually on the first date. Like, and I usually am, like, gonna kind of, like, find a soft entrance if I can. Sometimes it's just, I live in a van. And, you know, that person will be like, oh, well, that's not for me. But that's fun. Hope you enjoy it. And that's cool. I think that's great. It's also a bit of trying to explain to people like what that means, because a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, you live in a van, and it's associated with a number of different things depending on that person's experience.
Sure. It's like, oh, you're going to try and move in with me probably as soon as...
Or you're a serial killer who lives in a van.
Right.
Well, see, I don't know. You would think, I feel like it's more nuanced than that even now. Like the stereotype even in the 90s when it was like Chris Farley in the van down by the river.
Oh,
now it's
I
like
can't even
everybody's
tell you
dream.
how many
It's
times.
everybody's dream, and like only very few of us can like figure it out and afford to make it happen. Like it's actually quite a luxurious way.
I wish
of
more
living.
women were in your camp, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, I would say that my
Well,
experience
ladies,
has been that they've been.
If you meet a man who lives in a van, give him a chance.
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying.
I will
Give a van
say
man a chance.
An outdoor shower
Give a van a
is
chance.
one of the most luxurious experiences in this life you can have, as a proper outdoor shower.
And if you can have that with a partner, I haven't experienced it yet, but I imagine it's actually better.
in a with natural beauty all around, I mean, what more do you need?
You should sing them a song, then tell them you live in a van.
Seriously.
I should sing them a song about living in a van,
There
and
you
that's
go.
how
Have somebody
I
to
think
tell
we've
you.
solved this problem.
Yeah.
That'll do it. Sing first, and then you'll just
See,
get them
did
right
you guys
in
see
the palm of your
Barbie?
hand.
Not yet. Okay, but I've been
We were
hearing
so
good things.
Without
asleep.
ruining anything for you, there is a scene in that movie where like they make fun of guys playing songs for girls, and I think it did something to me.
Oh my gosh.
It fucking capsized that whole move, which has made me feel in a way that I can't quite define yet. Because for as long as I can remember, it's music and playing guitar and singing it, and 5 years of being in a band and everything has always been something that was a natural thing to me. Like, I never thought of it as like, oh, this is the move. I'm going to like put the move on this girl by playing her songs. But it was something that is such a big part of my life that it inevitably comes into play. Like when I had my place, like if I was dating someone long enough, they came over, the guitar is sitting there, we play a song. But now after seeing that, I'm like, fuck, that feels really cringy. Like, I hate
I
it.
mean,
No.
I'll get back,
not with
don't
the
worry,
right
it won't
Yeah,
last
audience.
long.
it's like an Animal House when he smashes that guy's guitar, like singing. You know, it's like
Still one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, it's a perfect
such
scene.
a great scene.
But that probably set guitar players back a little bit too, like from wanting to be the guy at the party.
But if you listen
singing
to
a song.
it was the guy. He was just singing the most camp shit, and he was
Yes.
he's parked out on the stairwell with 3 girls sitting around him, and just
like it's not tacky when John Mayer sings a song.
It's a frat
Well,
house.
it's not tacky when it's sincere and authentic.
Yeah.
It's tacky when somebody's just like playing it as a move and they sing the same thing to every girl they've ever met and hope it lands on
They're just
with
singing
one
like
of them.
an
You
Ed
know.
Sheeran song or
Yeah,
something.
like I changed that channel on the radio. I don't,
Yeah.
but and it can be
Right.
getting serenaded in a way when you don't want that attention, or if it's from somebody you don't want. It is not a comfortable position, but
You're good.
when done.
You're
You're
good to go.
amazing.
Well,
The songs are good. Your voice is good.
Yeah.
You're a hot dude. Like you check every box already.
Well, you know what's interesting is actually it's in the same vein as what I was saying about being a salesman about certain things. It's the same context there where it's like it's almost like if I, like when I was in a band and I was playing shows, and then if a girl came up to me after the show and was like, you guys were so good, and we hit it off and we started to have a conversation, that feels totally fine to me. Mm-hmm. It's where
they came to you.
It's where, yeah, and it's where like the thing of like, let me play you this song and be right in your face, and
Right.
that, and in Barbie that's what it was.
Sure, okay.
So there was just this moment where like, and I was on a date seeing it with this girl, and she looked at me and I looked at her, and I was like, fuck. Just like, kind of like, was like, yeah, that's kind of my move. I don't know.
That's kind of that's funny.
Well,
No,
I'm
but
sure you do it with a lot more tact.
I mean, I think I do it with a lot more sincerity than
sure
Ryan
you
Gosling
do.
lip syncing a Matchbox 20 song, I hope. But
That's funny.
it's just one of those things where it's like, when you see an example of something that you do being sort of made fun of or put in a context of where it could be perceived in a way where you're like, I didn't even think about that.
Fuck,
Sure.
that's me.
Yeah,
you never-
and you do. You're like, yeah, that's kind of me. Like, it's on the fringe of what I could, be perceived as doing. It does feel icky. You're
Yeah.
like, ugh, like, am I like that? And then sometimes you're like, yeah, you kind of are. And you're like, oh, this is not good. And then you have to reevaluate your whole life, question all your decisions. How'd you end up here?
It's good to reevaluate a little bit.
I live in my head, so it's one of the things I have to get better about, I think. But like, I live it there.
Yeah.
Like, the only place I'm living rent free is in my head.
There's a cost. There's a cost to everything.
I guess so.
I
but-
mean, it's a big challenge. Like, you live in an apartment building, you get more interruptions. You bump into neighbors. You just see
Yeah.
the Amazon delivery man. Like, there's more
interaction.
more interruptions that like break that cycle.
But there's a loneliness that comes on the opposite end of that spectrum too. And I mean, for anyone who's considering this, I'm just trying to be like as open about it as possible. But like, there are days where I don't talk to anybody for an entire day or 2 days or 3 days, or I've gone like a week or two. And then like, part of me wonders if I'm too comfortable with that because I become that way from necessity. Like, some days you just aren't going to talk to people. Like,
But you do still, whether even you're like in your head about it or not, like your body is going through changes at that point, like you're getting less serotonin if you don't hug people, or
Yeah.
dopamine, all those things. Serotonin, not serotonin.
Whatever.
That's not the happy one. That's the sleepy one, isn't it?
no, that's
Serotonin is
melatonin
happy.
is I think what you're
Melatonin.
thinking of. But serotonin, yeah, I think you're on the
Dopamine
right
is
track.
the happy
Serotonin, those are the
I'm all
happy
mixed
ones.
up. But you know what I mean? Like, you just, that it takes a toll.
It does,
Whether you're good or like wired to be good at it, there's only so much you can take. Where
Yeah,
it's
but also, like-
radio silence is radio silence.
That's more like not talking to another human for 3 days is more normal in like human evolution than like living around 10 million people and like the hustle and bustle and cars honking and shit. Like, that ain't natural or normal or healthy necessarily either, like,
No, but we're like a social creature.
yeah, I guess so. But you
Not like
I
you
mean, you don't
talk-
have bad social skills or something like that,
No, I mean, well, like, I think, I didn't always live in a van, but so like, I remember,
I remember days when I was
I remember how-
part of your
how it works.
society.
I mean, I remember how it works when I'm in this situation. And actually part of it is that when you get, when you get the exposure to being isolated, and I think all of us went through that during COVID, some of us, I did it differently because I was living in an apartment by myself, didn't have the dog yet. So I went through like real isolation. And I, at the beginning was like, am I going to be okay? Like, am I going to get through this all right? And then thrived. So I think in a way that kind of informed me about what being in the van was going to be like. I knew it was going to come with limited social interaction. I knew there was going to be like a fall off of like, I don't have a place to invite friends over to hang out. I don't have, the normal structural things that incorporate other people. So I had already kind of accepted it. And I think as a product of being isolated during COVID, I kind of was prepared for it. Like, it was kind of like like a gauntlet that I went through unintentionally and came out the other side like, oh, I can deal with this not so in a relatively healthy way without putting myself in like a really negative headspace.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that COVID was training for van life, but
The Vandemic.
yeah, right. And like, listen, I am not the only person. I think I'm comforted in the sense that like a lot of people had that idea and a lot of people went and did
it's
it
true.
during the pandemic. And if you go on social media, there's no shortage of like van lifers posting,
Oh, yeah.
and some people have made a business out of it. Some
Sure.
people turned their whole entire experience into a profit. Like, they are basically making videos and they're,
Yeah. Tom Green was doing that for a minute.
oh really?
Yeah, he was living in a van. He was
I
just like
cannot
making a
imagine
video a day.
what
just
the
like
fuck was
in
going
his
on
van.
in that van.
That's so funny.
Freddie got fingered?
Yeah, he was, it might have happened.
Well, I'm always looking for excuses to like camp and stuff, and I don't really know. I don't have my bearings around here, so if you're ever looking for company, we should go camp somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just
Totally.
hang
And then you'll
out.
be the one in the van, and we'll be in a tent.
We'll
and
be in the tent.
Whole,
Yeah,
it'll be
the
shifted,
paradigm
yeah.
shift.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I'd probably be the one in the hammock, and I'd give you guys the van.
Oh
so.
well,
Oh, that's sweet. I mean,
we'll take you up on that. No.
Yeah, I
It's-
like sleeping outside when I can. When,
I
it's,
do
when
too.
it's suitable.
Yeah, same. Actually,
I know. I
do
don't.
too.
It's like
I love sleeping in a tent, waking up in a tent. So
yes,
peaceful.
it's so calming. I don't do it enough, but again, like you have to know the spots, and it can be intimidating to like know where to go and get the permits and do all the things. It's
Yeah, then the first 7-8 months that I spent out on the road, that first 2 months was, I remember having like a full on panic attack almost, like driving out of the city. Like I had no idea where I was going to sleep that night. I had no idea where I was going. I didn't really have an agenda or a plan. It just sort of like was like, well, again, get yourself in and see what happens. And there were so many nights where like I had like all these apps that I had read, or YouTubers, people had said like these are things that really help, and they were like off grid, apps, where to go stay, where to sleep, BLM land, all this stuff. And you're just following these things blindly into the middle of the night sometimes, just like, and I do remember like a handful of times.
real committed.
You are so committed. There was like, I mean, I remember there was one outside of Colorado. It was in Colorado, just outside of Grand Junction, and it was like getting close to the sun was setting, and I wasn't quite to where I needed to be, and it was basically this long dark road on. And I mean, I could only go like 5 miles an hour because it was so bumpy.
Oh wow.
So like I'm going 5 miles an hour, and I'm just looking at the dot on the GPS to where I am and where I need to go, and thinking the van will fall apart before I get to this place. like it's rattling so much. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing out here? And then I get to the campsite and it's terrible. Like it wasn't even worth it.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God. So there's that experience. And then there's like just outside of Monument Valley, there's a place called Valley of the Gods. It's a 17-mile loop in the middle of nowhere. And you basically wake up under the massive mesas and buttes of Arizona and Utah, and it's like these Red Canyon rocks, and like it is. I'll show you pictures. It's something out of a fucking postcard, and you're just like, how? And I'm like, I have my 2-burner stove. I'm like cooking eggs and bacon in the morning, and like similar to what you said, just like in that moment, you're like, this is heaven on earth. It's like exactly what I wanted to be doing.
Peace.
It's the whole purpose of me being out here.
Uh-huh.
So you got them both. You get the whole spectrum when you're
Yeah.
out there. It's like sometimes you're driving on a road in the middle of the night, the bumpiest fucking road you've ever been on, and it leads to the shittiest place you've ever been, and then you're just like, what the hell am I doing here? And then other nights you're doing that. You're like, you're
leads
wait.
you to the best spot you've ever
Yeah.
been. You're like, okay.
And
that bumpy
I
road.
arrived there at night, and I didn't even realize that I parked, and I was just like, well, this is a place to park. And then I didn't see where I
That's
was
so
until the
cool.
morning. So when I opened the sliding door, the first thing I see is this massive, huge red rock, and it's just beautiful, and the sunrise is coming up, and
That's
it's just
the
like,
best.
what the hell?
Wow.
Sounds so nice.
Yeah.
Well,
We're going camping.
we must.
You must.
Let's go.
Camping is an essential part of life.
Fuck
yeah. It
Return
really is
to when we were all,
wilder.
Nature. Yeah, wilder. Freer.
Wilder.
freer.
Freer. Well, dude, thanks
Yeah.
for doing the podcast.
Of course, that was awesome.
Yes.
How'd it go?
So
Yeah,
good
you
to
said
talk
this
to
is your first podcast.
Yeah, it was great. I mean,
Easy.
it just felt very natural. I mean, other than being able to really hear my own voice, I wouldn't say that I noticed anything. It's harmless.
Harmless.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you
It's not
go.
so bad. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, thanks for doing it.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thank
And
you.
now we're going to record a song of
I
yours.
think that's awesome. I think that'll be a big part of what you'll gain more insight from. Is like a lot of that's written from that experience. And
Oh,
all
sick.
that stuff.
Oh, yeah,
So-
I'll be listening to all your lyrics differently now, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
I bet
Now
you
that we know
will.
the real AJ deep down. All right, sick. Well, yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, AJ.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Fuck yeah. Sick, bro.
Yeah, man, that was
Appreciate
fun.
it.
It's so weird taking the headphones off.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Like
yeah.
your hearing just goes back to
I know.